Yeah, in this session, we are going to discuss about deep learning. Okay, and obviously, we are going to learn some practicals, and that we will do with Keras and TensorFlow. But before that, we have to clear the technical concepts of deep learning. So let's discuss it. First, we'll start with artificial neural network. Okay, just 1 minute. You have to know what is a neuron. You heard it right. This is neuron, and this we all know about biological neurons. And these neurons are interconnected nerve cells that build the nervous system and transmit information throughout the body. ये जो हमारा ह्यूमन बॉडी की बात कर रहे हैं हम, ह्यूमन बायोलॉजिकल न्यूरॉन्स, उसमें क्या होता है? न्यूरॉन्स some interconnected nerve cells that build nervous system and transmit information throughout the body. If you look at the figure carefully, you can see that these are dendrites, right? Information comes to here, and this is cell nucleus, action. Okay. Similarly, action terminal, switch, and synapses, then output signal. So neurons are the ones who actually, because of which we get the information throughout the body. Now, if we simplify the illustration, then what happened? The components of this biological neural network, we have dendrites. You can see in this diagram, a dendrite, right? Dendrites receive inputs from the other neurons. Okay. And actions transmit the biological neurons output, and the cell nucleus is used for information processing, and synapse is the connection between two nerve cells. ठीक है? तो डेंड्राइट्स क्या करते हैं? बाकी जो अदर न्यूरॉन से इनपुट आते हैं उसको रिसीव करते हैं. सेल न्यूक्लियस इज यूज्ड फॉर इंफॉर्मेशन प्रोसेसिंग. synapse is the connection between two nerve cells, and actions transmit the biological neurons out. अब ये हो गया आपका biological neurons, right? Now let's talk about artificial neuron. Note, you can see here x1, x2, xn, ये सब nodes है जिसमें कि आपको कोई जो भी इनपुट है, इनपुट आते हैं. Then weights are there, and these are then sent to neuron, and then ultimately we get the output. So an artificial neuron is analogous to biological neurons, bilkul, where each neuron takes inputs and adds weights to them separately, sums them up, and passes this sum through a transfer function to produce a non-linear output. Sorry. तो ये आर्टिफिशियल न्यूरॉन भी हमारा ह्यूमन न्यूरॉन बायोलॉजिकल न्यूरॉन के जैसा ही है. यहाँ पे हर एक न्यूरॉन इनपुट लेते हैं, उसमें वेट ऐड होता है, सम करते हैं सारे इनपुट वेटेड सम, एंड ये सम को हम पास कर देते हैं एक ट्रांसफर फंक्शन के थ्रू, एंड अल्टीमेटली हमें नॉन लीनियर आउटपुट मिलते हैं. तो आर्टिफिशियल न्यूरॉन्स, राइट, these are different inputs, accordingly different weight, x2, w1, w2, w3, wn, and this is bias, summation, threshold unit, artificial neural, and ultimately output. Right. So a nerve cell is a simple logic gate with binary outputs. Right. Nerve cell क्या है? एक simple logic gate जिसमें binary output क्या कैसा होगा? Binary. Dendrites can process the input signal with a certain threshold, such that if signal exceeds the threshold, the output signal is जनरेटेड। डेंड्राइट्स इनपुट सिग्नल को प्रोसेस करते हैं, इसमें कि एक थ्रेशोल्ड रहता है, और इस थ्रेशोल्ड सिग्नल का वैल्यू अगर थ्रेशोल्ड से एक्सीड हो जाए तो आउटपुट सिग्नल जनरेट होता है। थोड़ा सा हम क्लोजली देखते हैं बायोलॉजिकल न्यूरॉन्स वर्सेस आर्टिफिशियल न्यूरॉन्स। ये बायोलॉजिकल न्यूरॉन्स है, राइट, और यहाँ आर्टिफिशियल न्यूरॉन्स इनपुट 1, इनपुट 2, इनपुट एंड आउटपुट। बायोलॉजिकल न्यूरॉन्स का जो सेल न्यूक्लियस है, हमारे पास आर्टिफिशियली क्या है, नोड, डेंड्राइट, यहाँ पे सेम इनपुट, सिनेप्सिस, राइट, यहाँ पे वेट्स और इंटरकनेक्शन, एक्शन एंड आउटपुट, ये इन लोगों के बीच कनेक्शन है। ओके, now let's talk about neural networks and the types of neural networks. So neural network क्या होगा, तो फिर neural network consists of interconnected computation models that simulate the behavior of biological न्यूरॉन्स। हम देखना डिफाइन करते वक्त ये टर्म जरूर यूज कर रहे हैं, इंटरकनेक्टेड। इंटरकनेक्टेड ये देख के आपको समझ में आ जाएगा, ये सारे इंटरकनेक्टेड हैं। Okay, that simulate the behavior of biological neurons. Input layer, hidden layer, output layer. Each neuron consists of multiple node layers such as input layers, one or more hidden layers, and output layers. Neural network. Artificial neural network processes the information using the following steps. Input are processed into the first layer. देन इस इनपुट पहले हमने क्या किया, फर्स्ट लेयर में पास कर दिया, इनपुट्स आर पास्ड, अच्छा ये लिखा है, इनपुट्स आर पास इनटू द फर्स्ट लेयर। देन इस इंडिविजुअल न्यूरॉन रिसीव्स इनपुट एंड असाइंस ए वेट टू ईच ऑफ देम। ठीक है, हर एक इंडिविजुअल न्यूरॉन इसको इनपुट, ये इनपुट्स को रिसीव करके कुछ वेट असाइन कर देते हैं। द न्यूरॉन्स जनरेट द आउटपुट बेस्ड ऑन द असाइन वेट्स। The outputs from the first layer subsequently forwarded to the second layer for further processing. And this process continues until the final output is produced. Okay, so we use neural network to solve complex problems that require analytical calculation. Some of the major types are like perceptron, multi-layer perceptron, deep neural networks or DNN, convolutional neural networks, recurrent neural networks or RNN. तो ये सब इनका टाइप है, परसेप्टन, मल्टीलेयर परसेप्टन, डीप न्यूरल नेटवर्क और डीएनएन, सीएनएन माने कन्वोल्यूशनल न्यूरल नेटवर्क, आरएनएन और recurrent neural network. First, let's come to perceptron and multi-layer perceptron. Perceptron is the simplest type of ANN and is mainly used for binary prediction. जितने भी हमारा ANN का टाइप है, सबसे सिंपलेस्ट टाइप क्या है, परसेप्ट्रॉन है, और इसको ही हम यूज करते हैं बाइनरी प्रेडिक्शन के लिए। A perceptron can only work if the data is linearly separable. Perceptron तभी काम करेगा अगर data is linearly separable. If data are not linearly separable, then we cannot use this perceptron model. Then one step ahead, we have multi-layer perceptron. Multi-layer perceptron. Here we have multiple layers of perceptron, as the name says itself, and the input pass through one layer, and the outputs of the last layer are the final outputs of the MLP. Okay, in एक लेयर से जो इनपुट जा रहा है आपका, इनपुट क्या हो रहा है, इनपुट पास थ्रू ईच लेयर, हर एक लेयर से एक इनपुट पास हो रहा है, और आउटपुट लास्ट लेयर का जो आउटपुट होगा वो फाइनल आउटपुट होगा। नाउ इट कैन हैंडल मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स प्रॉब्लम्स बाय लर्निंग नॉन लीनियर रिलेशनशिप। तो ये हो गया आपका एमएलपी और मल्टीलेयर परसेप्ट्रॉन। ठीक है, देन वी हैव डीप न्यूरल नेटवर्क और डीएनएन। ये क्या है, एक मल्टीलेयर computational model that process data in the layered manner, refining information at each layer, and analogous to how our human brain functions. Input nodes, hidden nodes, output nodes. The depth of the DNN enables it to effectively address complex problems such as इमेज प्रोसेसिंग एंड स्पीच रिकॉग्निशन। जितना डेप्थ का मतलब होता है कितना हिडन लेयर्स आप इंक्लूड किए हो, ठीक है। जितना करोगे उतना ही आपका कॉम्प्लेक्स प्रॉब्लम को इफेक्टिवली एड्रेस कर सकते हैं। हम इसको टफ प्रॉब्लम लाइक इमेज प्रोसेसिंग, स्पीच रिकॉग्निशन, ये सब के लिए यूज करते हैं। देन कन्वोल्यूशनल न्यूरल नेटवर्क, राइट। कन्वोल्यूशनल न्यूरल नेटवर्क, ये डायग्राम को देखिए आप, एल जी एन, आई टी, V4, V2, V1, faces and objects, edges and lines, shapes, receptive field size, right? V1 visual field, V2, then V4, then IT, then these are the features, faces, objects, shapes, edge lines. So idea of CNNs was neurobiologically motivated by the findings of locally sensitive and orientation selective nerve cells in the visual cortex. CNNs analyze visual data and are inspired by the brain's visual context, effective for recognizing pattern in images. Example, image classification. ठीक है। इमेज क्लासिफिकेशन में मैक्सिमम टाइम हम CNN यूज करते हैं। ये सब हम अभी तो ब्रीफ में बता रहे हैं, विल गो इनटू द डिटेल्स। देन RNNs handle sequential data suitable for time series and language modeling tasks. It maintains a state of the previous input. तो RNN के पास ये बेनिफिट हो जाता है, इट मेंटेन स्टेट माने मेमोरी ऑफ द प्रीवियस इनपुट। Data in, RNN, data out, recurs new state to itself. So we can think of the state as the memory of the RNN that recurs into the new net with its new input. तो यहाँ पे previous input के बारे में रख सकते हैं ये information. So means memory is associated in recurrent neural network. Now network architecture. So one can programmatically set the number and type of neural layers and the number of neurons comprising each layer. Simple neural network, this is where one hidden layer exists only. You can see it is yellow one. But deep learning neural network where multiple hidden layers are there. Deep neural network performs models have greater precision than conventional technique, but require more information to train and attain this precision. So traditional ML algorithms or statistical learning, small NN, medium NN, and large NN. तो and large NN का performance ज़्यादा बढ़ जाता है, no doubt, but इसके हिसाब से इसको ज़्यादा इनपुट की जरूरत होता है। ट्रेनिंग में हम यूज करते हैं डेटा, राइट। जितना ज़्यादा डेटा होगा उतना ही उनका एक्यूरेसी बढ़ जाएगा। Right, then combination of neural network layers. The number of layers in CNN or RNN depends on the complexity of the tasks and data, with deeper architecture often used for more complex problems. Input layer, hidden layer, output layer. So input layer depicts the dimension of the input vector. Hidden layer depicts the intermediary nodes that divide the input space into regions without soft boundaries. The output layer depicts the output of the neural network. नाउ ये आपका सिर्फ ब्रीफ आइडिया था डिफरेंट टाइप का नेटवर्क, न्यूरल आर्टिफिशियल न्यूरल नेटवर्क का, राइट। इसमें हमने परसेप्टन के बारे में बात की। परसेप्टन जो सबसे सिंपलेस्ट है, बट ये लिनियरली सेपरेबल डाटा के लिए काम कर सकता है। इसका ही एक्सटेंशन मल्टी लेयर परसेप्शन, मल्टीपल लेयर्स होता है। बट वी हैव डीप न्यूरल नेटवर्क जिसमें हिडन लेयर्स से होता है, कन्वोल्यूशनल न्यूरल नेटवर्क, एंड देन RNN। अब हम आते हैं एक एक करके। फर्स्ट परसेप्ट्रन। What is perceptron? The perceptron is a fundamental type of artificial neural network designed for binary classification tasks. It computes a weighted sum of inputs, and this is fast through a step function to determine the output class. Here, Sky's equation is very simple. Fx is equal to 1 if w dot x plus b is greater than 0 and 0 otherwise. Here, w denotes a vector of real valued weight. B denotes the bias, which is an object adjusts the boundary line without any dependency on the input values. Just 1 minute. So it is very much clear now that in case of this perception, the formula is fx is equal to 1 if wx plus b is greater than 0 and 0 otherwise. Okay, so w denotes a vector of real valued weight, b denotes the bias. And what is bias? This is an object that adjusts the bounding line without any dependency on the input values. And x denotes the vector of input x values. Then how it works? What is the working principle of perceptron? Just 1 minute. Now, this perceptron has three inputs, x1, x2, and x3. And accordingly, w1, w2, w3 are the weight, right? And is the output. So importance of this input is determined by the corresponding weights, w1, w2, w3. And output is a sum of inputs multiplied by their corresponding weights. So output is equal to x1 w1 plus x2 w2 plus x3 w3. Now, so output can be calculated for any number of inputs. It is also a linear classification algorithm. It can learn decision boundary that is a straight line or a hyperplane. So weight of a perceptron are trained with different sets of inputs. At every passes of inputs, the perceptron produces the output either 0 or 1, which is compared to the ground truth. Right? क्या कर रहे हैं हम? At every process of inputs, perceptron क्या produce कर रहा है? Either 0 or 1. Right? That is compared with ground truth. Now weights are adjusted accordingly for better prediction. Adjust कर सकते हैं हम weights को ताकि prediction सही हो. And a perceptron works well when the classes in the data are linearly separable. Perceptron का ये है कि ये linearly separable होना चाहिए data. Now components हम फिर से देखते हैं. The following are the components of a basic artificial neuron. This is this x1, x2, x3, xn, and respective weights w1, w2, w3, wn. These are inputs के लिए. And then the summation takes place here. And b is the bias. Activation functions. Then ultimately, this is the output prediction, right? So output is equal to fwx plus b. So input, weight, bias, summation function, and activation functions are the components. You can see that these inputs are a set of values for which one needs to predict the output value. And these weights, they are a set of real values that are associated with each feature and state the importance of that feature in predicting the final value. Means based on the weight, we can have an idea that which feature has how much importance or how much preference given to it, right? Bias is used for shifting the activation functions either left or right and can be referred to as y-intercept in the line equation. And summation function, it binds the weights and inputs together and finds their sum. And activation function is used to depict non-linearity in the model. Okay. So activation function का काम क्या होता है? To depict non-linearity in the model. Perceptron feed-forward neural network. So feed-forward neural networks are also known as feed-forward nets. is a type of artificial neural network where information flows only in one direction from the input layer to the output layer without any feedback connections. तो ये feed forward है, इसमें कोई feed forward connections नहीं है. Input layer, hidden layer, output layer. Information flow is unidirectional. Information is distributed. Information processing is parallel. Feed forward neural network. The information only moves from the input layer to the output layer through the hidden layers. It cannot remember anything that happened in the recent past except its training, right? क्योंकि कोई memory नहीं है. Since it only considers the current input, it has no notion of the order in time. Sorry. The information moves straight through the network and never passes a node twice. तो information move होता है straight, एक node को दो बार task नहीं करते, and it has no memory of the input it receives. A multi-layer perceptron. They are a type of feed-forward artificial neural network that creates a collection of outputs from a set of inputs. Input layer, hidden layers, output layer. They are formed from multiple layers of perceptrons. Now, for a multiple layer perceptron, y is equal to fwx plus b, where y is the output, x input, w as it is weight, and b bias, and f is the activation function. Now remember that exclusive OR problem, we cannot represent it. A perceptron can learn anything that it can represent, that is anything separable from a hyperplane. However, it cannot represent XOR since it is not linearly separable. ठीक है, linear separable नहीं है आपका. If you could recall it, right? So ये x1 है, this is x2, -1, 1, non -1. So let's understand the concept of perceptron using a Jupyter notebook. So हम एक Jupyter notebook पे इसका देखते हैं, just 1 minute. So we have implemented this here in Colab. Very simple one for all this perceptron example. Like you know that why we use import numpy as np in for numerical calculation and for import matplotlib.pyplot as plot for plotting. Then data set we have taken x say at b dot array 0 0 0 1 1 0 1 1 and y that is the labels 0 0 0 and 1, because in the case of n, if all are 0 or any one of them 0, that is 0, and if all are 1, then that is 1. Then we define a class perceptron. We have self learning rate, we given 0.1 and iteration tens. Self learning rate is equal to learning rate, self and iteration, self weights non, पहले weights and bias non रखा. So that को fit किया, that fit self x comma y, right? N samples comma n features x if self weights and p zeros and features self weight 0. उसके बाद हमने ये functions run किया for I in range self dot n iteration. ठीक है, linear output is equal to np dot xi comma self weights plus self bias. Y predictor is equal to 1 if linear output is greater than 0 or else 0. अगर आपका वैल्यू 0 से ज्यादा हो तो predicted 1 होगा, else 0 होगा. Update is equal to self learning rate into yi minus y predicted. Self weights is equal to self weights plus update into xi. Self dot bias is equal to self dot bias plus update. Then define predict self comma x np.x comma self weight plus self bias, return 1 if I greater than equal to 0, else 0 for I in linear output. Model is equal to perceptron, learning rate 0.1 and iteration 5. Model dot fit xy, this prediction model dot predict x, print f prediction, print f weight, model weight, bias, model bias. तो इसके बाद हमने prediction हमें मिल गया 0 0 0 1, weight 0.2 0.1, bias इतना मिल गया, ठीक है। तो ये सिंपल से आपका परसेप्ट्रॉन था। नेक्स्ट क्लास में हम और डिस्कस करते हैं। If you have any doubt, then please ask me. Thank you.